Hello everyone, welcome to Quick Learning. Today we are going to learn about revenue from contract with customers. This is Arun Kumar, CA and CW.
From my view, the revenue recognition in IFRS 15 is mainly based on how customer sees a contract. Let me explain the same with the conditions laid down in IFRS 15 with some examples in the upcoming slides. Conditions set out in IFRS 15 for revenue recognition purposes. There are 5 conditions which are set out for revenue recognition purposes. Each of it have a lot of interpretation. I'm not going in depth, but just trying to give an overview of the conditions set out. Condition number 1. Identify contract with customer. Contracts could be oral, written, hard by accepted business practices which are customarily followed in any business. But above all, the contract shall be enforceable by law. A contract resignable at the option of one party with no recourse option is not considered as a valid contract under IFRS 15. Next, identify performance obligation. Performance obligation means the activities or the actions which the service provider or the seller has to provide the customer. The performance obligation can be a single performance obligation or a multiple performance obligations involved in a composite contract. If each action agreed on a contract are able to satisfy the customer needs independently of each other, then each such action can be constituted as a separate performance obligation. And the transaction price for the whole contract could be allocated for each such performance obligation separately, and revenue shall be recognized for each of such performance obligation. Okay. The next is determination of transaction price. The transaction price could be a fixed sum which is agreed upon in a contract, or it could be a variable consideration which depends on the performance of the contract. Okay. If variable consideration is agreed upon, then revenue recognition is usually done based on expected value method or the most probable method. Let me explain the most probable method first. For example, if a customer wants delivery of 1000 units of a product in 5 days time, and if the supplier is able to satisfy that delivery timing, and he would be able to give a fixed price contract of $2,000. Okay, so delivery within 5 days time, the 1000 units delivery within 5 days time, the price agreed upon is $2,000. However, if the vendor is unable to deliver within 5 days, then the contract price for those products would be 1000 units. Okay, I'm just going by a hypothetical example. So for the probability of achieving the delivery limit, the delivery quantity of 1000 units within 5 days is say 80%, and the probability of not achieving 1000 units within 5 days is 20%. So as per most probable method, you will go by the 80%. So whatever is 80%, so you are able to get 1000 units delivered within 5 days time. So you will go by most probable method for revenue recognition purposes, assuming we would be able to achieve that delivery within 5 days, because that's the most probable one. But as per expected value method, what we will do is multiply 80% with the transaction price for achieving the delivery, and multiply 20% with the transaction price agreed for not achieving the delivery. A summation of both will give you an expected price. So that would be considered as transaction price with an expected value method. Okay. Without going into detail, I'm moving on to the next item, which is allocation of transaction price. Transaction price can be allocated, shall be allocated for each of the performance obligation agreed in step 2. The transaction price can be allocated based on proportionate selling price charged for each of the performance obligation. If you have the proportionate price charged for each of the performance obligation readily available, then there is no problem. If it is not available, then you will go by adjusted market assessment approach. So in the market, for each of the performance obligation, what would be the selling price charged? So you will get a detail of those, and based on that you will allocate your transaction price to the performance obligation. The next best item, the next best method could be expected cost plus markup approach. So under expected cost, what would be the cost involved to satisfy a performance obligation, and what's the overall margin which we have for the contract, and you will identify the expected cost in delivering each of the performance obligation and add up the margin and arrive at the transaction price. So that's another approach which you could follow, or that could be a combination of all, that is proportionate selling price or expected cost plus or assessed market approach. So you will go by a combination of various approaches. That is also possible. Going on to the next item. This is the final one, that is recognized revenue by satisfying the performance obligation. Performance obligation could be satisfied either at a point in time, or over a period of time. Okay, when the performance obligation is met at a point in time, that is, you have agreed upon delivery of a product and you have delivered the product, that's it, and so you will recognize revenue immediately. However, if you have to recognize, if you have to perform your obligation over a period of time, then your revenue has to be allocated and recognized over a period of time. Okay, so that's all about the 5 conditions which are laid down for recognizing revenue under performance obligation. And more importantly, there is one more item which would come up as an important item in the case of identifying the contract. So any contract which are identified in the very first place should also have a commercial substance and collectibility as one major condition which is involved. So with this, the condition set out in IFRS 15 for revenue recognition, we just had a bird's eye view, and move on to the next topic wherein we discuss multiple examples and multiple scenarios involved in revenue recognition. So it gives an overall picture of how revenues are recognized in multiple different scenarios and multiple different segments of the business. Let's move on and see the examples. Let's discuss the various scenarios involved in revenue recognition. First, buy 2 get 1 free. So when a customer is offered to buy 2 shirts of 20 each and get 1 shirt of 20 free, then from a customer perspective, for example, if you ask the customer what is the cost of each shirt, then he will say that I paid $40 for 3 shirts. So effectively the cost per shirt is $13 and all. So in this case, the transaction price is allocated even for the items which are offered as free. Okay, so yeah, but when the delivery of those shirts which are offered for free is done at the same time, then there is no difference in the revenue recognition, and the revenue recognition happens as is. However, for example, okay, if a shirt is offered as free, but for some reasons the shop is not having a stock of the shirt, and they will be giving the shirt only by next month or maybe next week, then the revenue recognition for the shirt which is offered as free will get postponed to next week or next month as and when the product is delivered to the customer. So that's from buy 2 get 1 free. There are various scenarios involved, even in the case of discount vouchers and coupons. Only when the validity of the discount voucher or coupon is expired, okay, the revenue attributable to that portion of discount voucher could be recognized. Okay, let's move on to next scenario. Free repair and replacement warranty for 2 years. When a customer is offered free repair or replacement warranty on purchase of a product, then the transaction price is split between the product and the free repair or replacement for 2 years. So the product, the transaction price for the product can be recognized immediately as and when the delivery is done, as and when the risk and rewards pass on. The product revenue could be recognized. But in the case of repair or replacement warranty, which is a performance obligation which has to be fulfilled over a period of time, so the revenue should also be recognized over a period of time. Okay, the recognition of revenue over a period of time could be done either by estimated value method or the probable value method, and there are also methods involving output method and input method, and we will discuss about that shortly. Let's move on to the next item. This is more prevalent in telecom sector, where you are offered to switch an operator and move on to this operator and get a phone free. Okay, so in this case, the total transaction price is allocated between the telecom services revenue, telecom services, and again to the free phone, and whatever the selling price or the cost of the free phone. So for that, the sizable portion of the transaction price is allocated, and the remaining amount which is attributable to telecom service is allocated separately. And the revenue attributable to telecom services has to be recognized over a period of time. And again, you should have enough conditions in place in the contract with the customer to ensure that you do not lose any revenue. That is, if the customer cannot resign the contract in the middle. Okay, only in that case, the revenue attributable to phone could be recognized immediately, and the revenue attributable to telecom services could be recognized over a period of time. Okay. The next item is build, operate, and transfer. So the build, operate, and transfer model works out on many areas wherein a large setup has to be done. Especially take the case of a data center, where the data center has to be built out, and the company which gets the contract to build the data center has to operate it out for some few years, and then it has to transfer to the customer. So the price for the build, operate, and transfer could be a fixed sum, or the price could be separately agreed upon for build, operate, and transfer. When the prices are separately agreed for build, operate, and transfer, then we need not think about allocating the transaction price. Rather, the recognition of revenue for each and every area, that is build, operate, and transfer, is something which we may have to look into keenly. But in the case of revenue recognition for the fixed contract, in the case of build, operate, and transfer, then the total transaction price has to be allocated between build portion, operate portion, and transfer portion separately. So, and once that is done, the build revenue recognition could be done either by output method or by input method. Output method refers to analysis of what portion of the contract is completed and what is not completed, and how much of the total contract value will attribute to incomplete portion of the contract. So based on that, you will recognize revenue. And then the input method. The input method is just like, identify what are all the factors of production. It could be the time hours spent, the hours spent, or the cost estimated, the total cost estimated versus the total cost incurred. So, or maybe the machine hours, or any other reasonable methods involved, any other reasonable input involved in the factors of production could be considered as a base for allocating the revenue over a period of time. Okay. The next one is pay for performance. One example which is close to my heart in the case of this scenario is performance fee for investment management business. So when it comes to investment management, we agree with the client that if your stock reaches a particular target number, if your portfolio reaches a particular target number, then any amount, any excess over and above the target would be charged with so much of performance fee. It may be a 2% performance fee, or something could be agreed upon. Okay, but the revenue cannot be recognized as and when the target is breached, but rather the revenue can be recognized only when the target breaches during the billable event. Okay, so the collectability of the revenue which is calculated has to be ensured before you recognize the revenue, and collectability could be ensured only when the billable event and reaching the target happens at the same time. Okay, and during the billable event, and if we reach the target, if the investment management company reaches the target, then revenue could be recognized. So that's all about pay for performance. Next is CAF versus FOB. So, and this is a whole topic. So in the case of CAF, the risk and rewards passes only when the products are handed over to the customer, and hence revenue can be recognized only when the complete handover is done. And in the case of FOB, as soon as the product is delivered outside of the factory gate or godown, the revenue can be recognized. But there are some exceptions to it. When the customer says due to non-adequacy of space or maybe the storage capabilities, and the customer wants the supplier to retain the product until he is having enough space to store the goods, then in that case, after getting confirmation and verifiable documents for audit purposes in place, revenue can be recognized even though the goods are not passed on to the customer. The next item, agency relationship, and we are just looking at travel agent picture here. So when you book a flight ticket through a travel agent, then the travel agent may charge you $100, but the travel agent would be paying the airline only $95, retaining $5 as commission. So in this case, what could be the revenue recognized in the books of travel agent, whether it is $100 or $5? So this scenario is explained in detail by IFRS 15. So as per IFRS 15, some questions have to be asked on who is the primary obligor of the transaction, that is, who shall perform for the transaction, and who is having latitude in fixing the selling price, and who bears the credit risk, and who has to perform the contract, or who may have to bear the risk involved in not performing a contract. So these questions have to be asked, but in this case, all the questions, the answer points out to the airline. So the revenue can be recognized in gross by the airline, but by the travel agent, the revenue has to be recognized in net at only $5 has to be recognized. So for any principal agency relationship, these questions have to be asked to identify whether revenue has to be recognized on gross basis or on net basis. The next item is real estate. So real estate is again impacted by IFRS 15. So whenever the real estate agent, the real estate builder promises, see, I will build out all amenities in place, and you are buying a flat in a remote area. So the builder promises the schools will come up, and we will have the schools and departmental stores built out in this area. Then and if it is agreed upon in the contract, then revenue can be recognized by the builder only when all the amenities are built in place. So the revenue recognition moves from point in time to over time because of this kind of agreement. So in the case of real estate contracts, the agreement, the contract plays a key role in revenue recognition. So only that determines how revenue could be recognized during the construction phase of the real estate business. Custom versus off-the-shelf software. In case of off-the-shelf software, the revenue can be recognized immediately as soon as the performance obligation, that is, delivery of the software, is done. But in the case of custom software, few questions have to be asked on whether the customer would be able to use the software without customization. That is, the software by itself, whether it could be considered as a performance obligation. If answer to the question is yes, then the transaction price has to be split between the software and its customization, and the performance obligation would be 2 in that case, and revenue would be recognized for software at the point in time and for customization over a period of time. But the answer to the question is no, that is, the software cannot be used without customization. In that case, the entire service delivery has to be recognized as single performance obligation, and revenue has to be recognized over a period of time based on the performance of the contract. That's all the various scenarios involved in revenue recognition. And IFRS 15 is a very vast area, and it involves multiple topics like contract modification, sale or return basis on goods, consignment transactions, and many others. So I'm not going to explain in detail about all those, and with this we will come to the end of the session on IFRS 15, a brief story. Thank you. Thanks for watching the video. See you again. Bye.